Over the last few months, so many things have happened that have impacted the property landscape, especially if you're a first-time buyer. But what are these changes, and does that make 2025 the right time to buy a property? Well, to delve into all of this today, I'm joined with Funmi Olufunwa, founder of Hoops Finance, to delve into whether or not 2025 is the right time to buy a property. Hello, Funmi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Ola. Thank you for inviting me on. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. You're wearing blue.
I am. I checked out your branding.
Yeah.
And I thought I'm going to blend.
No, I love it. I'm here for it. You look sexy. For everyone listening, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I'm Funmi. I'm by profession, I guess I started my career in law. So I'm actually a consumer finance lawyer.
Okay.
I left the law a couple of years ago to train as a financial coach, and I'm also a qualified mortgage advisor. And now what I do through Hoops Finance is provide financial education in schools and in workplaces. I guess the main mission is to give people the education that they didn't get when they were at school or in the home.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, maybe they're still not getting it now. I really want people to feel confident about their money, managing their money.
Yeah.
And also to know where to go if they've got questions, and where to go to seek support and guidance. That's kind of the mission.
Yes.
Finance.
I'm here for it. We love that mission, and it's a needed mission. And obviously, I love the content you share online. We've been friends now, for a couple of years, which I love. But what made you take the pivot from consumer finance to obviously now teaching finance?
Yeah, so good question. So I'm really fortunate in that because of the job I had, I learned a lot because I had to, because it was my job.
Yeah.
And I was just really aware that most people don't have that opportunity. They're off being a teacher, a dancer, all the different careers that you can do. But money, how we manage money, how we understand how things that happen in the economy relate to our own personal finances is something that all of us, we have to know.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what career or what job you have. You are going to be dealing with money on a day-to-day basis. And I just thought it was such a shame that people were going through, so a whole education system and weren't learning there. Then they were going into their places of work and they weren't learning there. But they were still, having to adult. They were still having to make those financial decisions. So I thought with the knowledge that I had, why couldn't I try and share that? So that's kind of the reason behind it.
And you haven't looked back since.
I haven't looked back, actually.
And this is why I've got you on the podcast today, because I know you're full of knowledge, especially when it comes to the property market. And like I mentioned, so much has changed. But before we dive into all things property, especially for the year ahead of us, I wanted to hit you with a couple of quick fire questions. So my first question, just to get you warmed up in the seat, is what's a guilty pleasure you love to spend your money on?
So I would say maybe it's not necessarily a thing. It's doing something. So I like to go out with my friends.
Yes.
So it's probably that.
Okay.
Probably going to see friends and going on nights out, that type of thing. I'm not massively into things apart from, I'd say, things for my home. So I'm not, there's nothing wrong with this, but I wouldn't, sort of go shopping and just buy like loads of clothes and stuff like that.
Yes.
That kind of doesn't really, that's not the sort of thing that I love doing. But I do like buying things for my home that I can look at and that look pretty. And I like spending time and money with my friends. So yeah, probably that. Yeah.
I love that. I say the same. And also, my second one would be travelling.
Of course. I love it when I'm like opening my Instagram, like, where's Ola now?
Not in England.
Not at all jealous.
No. And I guess my second one is, what's been your greatest financial achievement?
So I would probably say, and it's probably quite apt for this podcast, but it's probably buying my first property. And, I was about to say buying my first property on my own, but I'm really aware that whilst I did it on my own, I didn't buy with anybody else, I was able to do that because I was able to save up a deposit. And just to set the context, this was back in 2008.
Yeah. You know what I think is a shame is that everyone always has to caveat how they bought their home.
Well, do you know the reason why I'm doing that is because I think if I'm to sit here and be like, I bought my first home, I did it on my own, but then I don't explain how I did that. I don't know if I don't think I have to do that.
Yeah.
I like to do that because I like to provide context. But I don't want people to think, how did you do that?
Yeah, true.
So I do caveat it by saying I did it on my own and I didn't buy with anybody else. But it was because, number one, it was back in 2008.
Yeah.
So property prices was very, very different. I had a really decent paying job. So as I mentioned, I started off as a lawyer. and our starting salaries are really good. But then leading up to it, I lived at home for a year, didn't pay any rent. Thanks, Mum and Dad. For not paying any rent.
Lucky.
But then when I think back on it, I'm like, they probably should have done, but they didn't. Then when I first moved to London, I lived with my sister.
Yeah.
Again, she charged me something like £100 a month.
I need your family members. Sorry, Mum, but what?
She lived quite far, like she was within zone 6, but it was quite far out. So it was completely nowhere near any of my friends.
Yeah.
And it was like a little box room, but you can't complain, right?
Yeah.
£100 a month. And then when I did move out into shared flats and stuff, I always picked the smallest room. And the places where I rented, they used to price the rooms depending on the size. So if you got the big room with the ensuite, then you paid more.
Yeah.
If you took the box room,
You pay a little less.
then you paid less. So I would always take the smallest room because my thinking was, I'm not really in my room that much. I'm at work or I'm out.
Yeah.
So it's just a place to sleep. So because of all of those things, I was able to save. So that's kind of why I do the caveat. I'm very, very aware that renting now is very different to renting back in, the mid, 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So that is kind of why I caveat it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just think, it's such a great achievement that people should still be able to celebrate that achievement, because when I finally got the property ladder one day, maybe, I would like to be able to say it proudly and not have to feel like I have to justify it. But no, I really, really appreciate the context given there. But obviously, 2008, buying a property as a first-time buyer, to 2025, things have changed drastically. And I feel like so much changed in the final quarter of 2024 because of obviously Labour coming in, inflation, interest rates, all that going on. So I guess as we look towards this new year now, what are some key economic indicators that might influence whether or not this year is the right time to buy a house?
So I'm asked this question quite a lot. People always say, should I buy now or should I wait? And it's a really difficult question to answer because ultimately it really depends on your individual situation.
Yeah.
When we look at what's going on in the economy, if we're in a situation where maybe inflation isn't quite where we want it to be, or interest rates are higher than maybe they've been historically, it can cause a lot of concern. I totally get that. I think what you then need to really think is, okay, those are things that you can't change.
Yeah.
But what impact does that have on you as an individual and your decision to buy or not to buy? So have those things kind of in the background and think about how they impact on you. But I'd always start with, why do you want to buy a property? And how can you make it work? And it sounds really boring, but I think you just need to look at your numbers.
Yeah.
Do the numbers make sense? If actually when you run it through your budget, you're like, actually, I don't think I'll be able to afford it, because obviously when you get a mortgage, it's not just that higher payment once, right? That's if it is a higher payment, for example, it's that for the next, 20, 30 years, right? So it's like, look at your situation. If you're, in a job where you're thinking, actually, I might not want to stay in this job for a long time, or you're in an industry that's potentially at risk, for example, and if you think my income might not be stable, then, question whether it's the right time to go ahead and, buy a property.
Yeah.
But if your income is fine and you can sort of see the potential for it to grow, if you know where you want to live, like in terms of the area you want to live, and you're comfortable staying there for, a good number of years, and you can afford it, then do the numbers. If the numbers make sense, then I'd say, well, why not?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, like we always say on the podcast when it comes to properties, that sadly no one has a crystal ball. But obviously with rising property prices, do you think the housing market might cool down in 2025? Or do you
I don't know.
Or do you think affordability will still be an issue for first-time buyers?
I think affordability will still be an issue because the way in which affordability is calculated for a lender to lend you money is that they'll, and this is broad, right? Because each lender will approach things slightly differently. But typically they might start with sort of 4 to 4.5 times income. So the average full-time salary in the UK is about 35 grand. So if we times that by 4, we're at 140 grand. And if we times that by 4.5, we're kind of like 156 or something like that, right? So that as a starting position, for a lot of people, they can't find a property that that they can buy with, you know, with that amount of borrowing.
Definitely not if you're in London.
Exactly. If they're, you know, particularly if you're buying on your own, particularly if you're in more expensive areas like London or the southeast. So, and obviously not everybody's on the average salary. Some people are earning more. So I think, but I do think affordability is going to be an issue, just because the value of houses are quite, you know, it's quite a lot. So I think if you're buying on your own, it's then a case of like, how can you, or what can you use to try and boost your affordability?
Yeah.
You know, increase deposits, that type of thing. So yeah, I think what we have, the problem we have, I believe, in this country is that we don't have enough truly affordable housing. I think sometimes people say, oh, we've built some affordable housing, and then you look at it and it's like a 1 or 2 bedroom flat for what's not affordable to most people.
Yeah. Which is still like what, £400,000 or £500,000, and if not, it's shared ownership. Which again, not many people want to buy shared ownership either, because in London at the moment, so many new builds that are being built are shared ownership properties.
Yeah, and that's what I think makes it really difficult. Is that with the best will in the world, there aren't enough of the properties that people can afford to buy.
Yeah.
Without having the support of, you know, your parents or your grandparents. And that's kind of the situation that we're in. So I think it's kind of a case then of looking at what you can do to try and make things more affordable.
Yeah.
Can you buy with other people, you know, siblings, friends, that type of thing. I see a lot of people, or hear a lot of people say, just move somewhere cheaper. That really frustrates me.
Yeah.
Because for a number of reasons. Number one, why should you... I can see why you don't want to leave your network. If you've sort of born in the southeast and all your friends and family are here, I can totally see why you don't want to move to somewhere where it's cheaper to buy, just to buy, because you want to be near them. But also, I find that argument a bit strange. I'm like, okay, well, if everybody that was on a salary that doesn't allow them to afford to live in London, for example, if they all moved, who's going to do all of their jobs?
No one will be left in London.
Right. So I think what we do need to kind of think about it sensibly. How can we have a housing system where it caters for people with different levels of income, different types of housing, that is truly affordable?
Yeah, I agree. And this is something I really battled with last year, in the sense that I got to the point where I found properties that were in my price bracket, but it's also a case of, okay, yes, I've been afforded with an X amount mortgage, but because I am a single woman trying to live in London, it's not just the mortgage I've got to account for in my budget, it's the cost of bills on my own, it's the cost of service rent, like service charge, ground rent, etc., etc. And again, those fees don't kind of get accounted for, especially if you're buying a leasehold property, which many people will have to, especially with affordability being an issue. However, at the end of 2024, we started to see interest rates slowly decline. So what does that actually mean for first-time buyers?
So it typically will mean that I guess things can potentially become more affordable. Now, again, different lenders will do things differently. So maybe not all lenders, you know, not the interest rates for all mortgage lenders didn't necessarily go down.
Yeah.
But where they did, or what they have done, it potentially makes it easier for you to borrow, or to borrow more money.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, it's a good thing if you're looking to buy, or even if you're looking, you know, to remortgage, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, somebody who maybe wasn't able to buy now can suddenly buy. It might do, but it really just depends. The difficulty with this whole conversation is that I guess we're trying to have like a general conversation, but it's so person specific, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what I would say though is that it's always worth speaking to a mortgage advisor, just to kind of find out what is available to you, because there are lenders that have certain schemes. So for example, there are like no deposit schemes where you don't actually have to have a deposit, for example. So that's more about the level of income that you earn. And for a lot of people, if you are renting, so you're paying rent, it's quite hard to pay rent, pay all the bills and save. So those types of products might be more suited for somebody in that type of scenario.
Yeah.
Or there are lenders that will maybe do like a low deposit, so like a 5% deposit. So, you know, as individuals, if you're not in it, working in it day to day, you're not going to know all the different options.
Yeah.
Podcasts like this, I think, are brilliant because it gives people, you know, some information to go on. But I would always say, you know, go and speak to a mortgage advisor. they're on the ground, they're dealing with it day to day, and they can like look at your individual circumstances and they can tell you what options you have.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I guess, yeah, like you said, and what I've already mentioned is that there is no crystal ball, but I think, again, it's really important to be aware of what's going in the news, though, and what's actually changing and how it is going to impact us, because I feel like jargon's always thrown about in the news and we're just expected to kind of understand, bear and grin it and just move on. But another announcement that was secretly made at the end of 2024, but is going to impact many first-time buyers from the 1st of April this year, is stamp duty. Now, for me, firstly, what is stamp duty? And secondly, what changes are going to happen that will impact first-time buyers?
Yeah, and I would actually say, you say secretly made, but I was like, they didn't actually say anything.
No.
And to be fair to the government, I guess it wasn't they didn't make the original change, right? So they're just letting something happen as opposed to making a change. But yeah, you're alluding to the fact that the stamp duty rules are going to be changing.
Yes.
At the end of March. So what's stamp duty? So it's basically a tax. The full name stamp duty land tax, but we'll shorten it. It's basically a tax that you pay when you buy land or property of a certain value. So for first-time buyers, currently in January 2025, if you buy property of 425 or less, then you don't pay any stamp duty. However, that's changing, and the last day for that to exist is the 31st of March of this year. And then from the 1st of April, that 425,000 threshold is being reduced down to 300,000. So what that means is, if you were to buy a property that costs 425,000 today, you wouldn't pay any stamp duty. But if you were to buy that exact same property for the same price after the 1st of April, then you'd be paying, I think I worked it out, it was £6,250 stamp duty. So it's a massive difference, right? And you either have to, you've got a few options, I guess. You either save for a bit longer to save.
When we've already been saving for what, 10 years?
Quite, okay. Or you take that money out of the deposit that you might have, but then that'll mean then you've got less of a deposit. So if you already had, say, a 5% deposit and you found a 5% deposit mortgage, you don't have 5% anymore. You've got less than 5%.
Yeah.
So you might then need to change to a different mortgage product. So yeah, it's really, I totally get the frustration. And I think what's really unhelpful is this kind of like chopping and changing, because you think it's one thing, and then it changes. And you know, you and I, we work in this industry, right? So we're like looking out for these types of, changes so that we can tell people. But there are loads of people that just don't know. So might be quite surprised. That's why I think podcasts like this are amazing, because people that listen who, weren't aware of it, now they know and now they can plan.
Yeah.
It's a massive shame. And I guess the other thing that's happening is that currently you get this first time buyer special treatment if you're buying a property up to 625,000. That 625,000 is reducing,
of course,
it's reducing down. So at the moment you get this, you in this sort of special first time buyer stamp duty rules, if you buy a property up to 625k, that 625 is reducing down to 500. So from the 1st of April, if your property is over 500 and you're first time buyer, you don't get any of the first time buyer sort of nice bits, and you just drop into the normal system for stamp duty that everybody else has. And a lot of people will say, well, 500 grand, that's a lot of money, right? So you wouldn't expect a first time buyer maybe to be buying a property of that amount. But if you look at, again, if you're living in an expensive part of the country, if you maybe have a partner, if you maybe have some children, if you haven't been able to get on the property ladder, all that. So now you've got a family, and now maybe you're thinking a lot more long term. So your first property that you're buying maybe isn't a 2 or 3 yearer. It's now a 5 or 10 yearer. So it's going to be bigger.
Yes.
It's going to cost more money. So actually you might have people who are going over that £500,000. And then they're not able to benefit from any of the sort of stamp duty perks for first time buyers, and they drop into the normal system. So yeah, it's I totally see why people are quite frustrated by that, because it just seems like the goalposts are moving, and it's more money to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More money that doesn't exist. And I feel like, sadly, and this is why I'm glad we're doing this podcast at the beginning of the year before the changes are made, because it gives some people a heads up. But it's just like you said, the goalpost is being removed even further. It's kicking us when we're already down. Like, I feel like this generation of first-time buyers are really, really suffering. And yeah, I just think it's really, really rubbish. And I also think it's even worse when they, like you say, they didn't really announce it, but we're expected to know the changes were made. So I think, yeah, it's just been really, really tough.
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about this on the way here. I think we need to do things differently in this country. So if we think about America, oh, and actually what I should say is that those stamp duty changes, it's just for England and Northern Ireland. Wales and Scotland have different rules around stamp duty. But if we think about America, they have this concept, stick with me here because I'm going on
Yeah.
They have this concept of a college fund, right? So
Okay.
from birth, a lot of people are already talking about, a lot of parents, for example, are already talking about saving into their children's college fund. And they're starting to think about something that's going to be happening to their child when they're sort of 17, 18, so far in advance. And this may not be possible for everybody, but I wonder if we need to start having a much more long-term view of savings products.
Yes.
So that you're not thinking in your early 20s, oh, I'd like to buy a property. And then it takes you 5-10 years to save up to kind of to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But if you've already been from birth, your parents, or from a much younger age, saving with this goal in mind, and yeah, we have like savings products, we have children's savings products, we've got cash ISAs and stocks and shares ISAs, but I don't know if having those names is actually helpful. If we had things like
house
fund or whatever, would that encourage more people to start sooner? I just think we need to think differently, because I think what we've been doing so far, it's not working for everybody.
Yeah.
And we need to find a way of having products and services that work for more people. So I don't know, I just think the financial services industry could take a look at that.
Yeah. Hashtag Funmi for president. Absolutely. Actually, not president, prime minister. You've got me thinking American now. But yeah, no, definitely need to get you as prime minister, because I agree. I really do. But I guess I don't want to make this podcast seem doom and gloom, because there are people that are getting onto the property ladder. It's definitely doable. I think it might just take some of us a lot longer than we want it to be, because a lot of my generation kind of crave instant gratification. But I guess with that being said, for this year, what government schemes or incentives are currently in place to support first-time buyers?
Yeah, so there is stuff, and you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be all doom and gloom. So let's look at the positives.
Yes.
So there are some schemes that people who are trying to get on the property ladder for the first time can use. So there's saving schemes like the Lifetime ISA.
Yes.
So that is basically a savings product. You can have a cash one, or you can have an investment version. And each year you can save up to £4,000 into it, and then the government gives you a 25% top up. So let's say you save the full 4,000, you get a £1,000 bonus.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know any savings product out there on the market at the moment that's basically got a 25% interest rate, which is what this is. So this is a great product if it works for you. I say if it works for you because there are a few loopholes that you need to jump through, and there's a maximum cap in terms of the property price. That's currently £450,000. We're hoping that there might be some change in that.
We'll see. I've been waiting patiently.
But I do think that is a great product, because, you know, whilst we talk about the South East and London being more expensive areas to buy property, there are loads of other places where property, you know, it won't be touching the price of that, right? So could be a really, really useful product, or is a really useful product for a lot of people. So if you're someone who's looking to save, to save up for a house deposit or house cost, then absolutely look into this product. Make sure you understand the way in which it works, because it could be a great way to get some extra cash to help with your saving. There's also an existing product called Help to Buy. So you can't open those anymore, but if you've already got one, you can keep saving into it, and you get a government bonus as well. So again, look into that one. And then in terms of schemes, I mean, you mentioned shared ownership.
Yes.
So that's a scheme that first-time buyers can use. And the way that works is, instead of buying or getting a mortgage for the entire property price, you effectively buy a smaller amount.
Yes.
So let's say you want to buy 25%. and then you get a mortgage for 25%, which is obviously a smaller amount, so it might be more affordable for you to get a mortgage. And then the other 75% is owned by, for example, a housing association. So you pay a mortgage on your bit, and then you pay rent on that other 75%. And if you want to, and if you're able to, you can buy more of the property. So you might start off with 25%, and then you might buy another chunk, and then buy another chunk. It's a process called staircasing. So that could work and does work for people as well. Because that one, I think, takes into account the fact that the income that you earn today isn't necessarily the income that you're going to earn forever.
Yes.
So as incomes rise, which you hope they will do in your job, in your career, then it might be that you can get a bigger mortgage and a bigger mortgage and a bigger mortgage. That's something to think about as well.
Yeah, no, like we said, we'll stay on a positive note because, there are some great schemes out there. Like you mentioned, the Lifetime ISA, there's no savings account I can vouch that is offering 25% on your savings right now. So that could be a great way of saving for your first property. I have a Lifetime ISA. I have a stocks and shares Lifetime ISA with AJ Bell, which I invest in regularly. Well, up to the £4,000 every tax year, and it's looking healthy right now. I mean, I'm still on my own buying, but at least my deposit is slowly growing, which we like to see. And I guess staying on that positive note, because I do believe there are many of us that will get on the property ladder eventually. I think it's just a case of saving for a little bit longer. Do you have any top money saving tips for those looking to get onto the property ladder this year?
I do. I think one thing I would say is that be realistic and do the maths, right? So to sit there and be like, I want to buy a property, but not actually sort of knowing exactly what you need and how much you need.
Yes.
I think it's just going to set yourself up for a fall. I think you're in a much better position if you literally know the figures that you're aiming for example, each month. And then you can be like, okay, well, I need to get to, let's say, I don't know, it's £500 a month, for example. So I can do that in a number of ways. I can cut things out, or I can try and see if I can make some extra cash.
Yes.
Or I can try and boost my income. But I think once you are aware of the goals, the financial goals that you're trying to hit, it makes it much, much easier. I think also make sure you're getting the most for your money. There are so many savings accounts that pay either no interest or really, really low interest.
Yeah.
And what we want to make sure is that our money is working as hard as possible for us. And it's also earning interest above the rate of inflation so that our money is growing.
Yes.
Right? We don't want our money to either be staying still or actually reducing in value. So shop around. I think that we should not be loyal to financial services companies.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
So like I said, I worked in financial services and they were my clients, and then I was working in the legal teams of these financial services institutions. So I have nothing against banks and building societies, etc. But they're a business at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
We need to be our own business. We need to get the most that we can for our money, make our money work hard for us. Don't stick around when people are not paying us as much as they're paying the person that's next to us.
Yep.
For pretty much the same thing, right? So I always say to everybody, have a look at what interest rate you're earning on your savings. Can you do better? You might be able to do better with the same provider.
Yes.
That's, quite easy. So have a look on their website, see what other options there are. But you might also be able to do better by going elsewhere. So don't be loyal.
And switch. I agree because I think we've learnt now very quickly that bank loyalty does not pay off. That comes down to, our interest rates on our savings. That's being paid to switch bank accounts now. So if you are with the same bank that you have been since you were 10, 11 years old, please switch because people are paying you to switch. So I think we need to learn this year, especially that being loyal does not pay off.
Yeah. And also one other thing I would say is that, and it kind of goes back to that affordability point again. So when you go to a lender and they're looking, and you're looking to borrow money from them, they're going to want to look at your income and they're going to times it on average by sort of between 4 and 4.5 times your income.
Yeah.
So one of the best things that you can do is actually to grow your income that they're going to use for that. So can you do courses? Can you switch jobs? Can you do things that are going to mean that your annual income is bigger?
Yes.
And so then when someone looks at that and then has to do that calculation, they're doing it on a much bigger amount. Because I think often what we hear is you need to cut stuff out. You need to stop going out. You need to stop buying the coffee or the
avocado.
Avocado on toast or the coffee, right? All of those things. They are great and they will reduce your income. But actually, what I believe will really move things and will really mean that you can borrow more if you need to, is to have a bigger sort of starting income.
Yes.
So, at your workplace, what courses can you do to make you more valuable in that workplace?
Yeah.
So when it comes to, I don't know, pay review time, you've got a better case for arguing that you should be paid more, or can you go elsewhere?
Yeah.
So things like that, I think, are really important as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, we all too often, maybe less on the podcast now because I've been really conscious of it, but too often do we say, cut this out, cut that, and I feel like everyone is on their bare bones budget at the moment because of this cost of living crisis. So I don't think many people are living lavish lives anymore because they can't afford to. So yeah, it is about increasing your income, and if you're maybe self-employed, looking at your business expenses to reduce that to increase your overall revenue, profit, etc., that banks can see that you're earning a specific amount as well, because that's something I looked at as well in the last year when I was looking to buy my very first property. I don't think I'm going to try and look at buying a property this year, to be honest, but I think also with that, I think it's really important to look at your goals and to make sure your goals are really your own goals, especially as we're in the month of January, because I feel like a lot of people always say to me they want to get on the property ladder, but I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And when I ask them that question, they're like, because I just want to. I'm like, okay, that's not a good enough reason as to why you're straining yourself every month and putting yourself down because you're not on the property ladder. I think because of social media now, I feel like, especially in your 20s, you can often feel like you're behind because your friends just post on Instagram with the keys hanging and whatever, jangling in front of the door, and it makes you feel like you're left out of this secret club. And I really had to think about my goals last year as to, okay, if I borrowed this amount and I'm living on my own now, will I be happy? And I was like, well, no, because I won't be able to go travelling. I won't be able to go do the things I'm doing right now because I'll have this mortgage for the next 30 years. Again, guys, that's 30 years. That could sometimes be 40 years. So I think it's really important to really, really think about your goals this year. And is it because you want to do it for you, or are you doing it because you want to join this secret social club, I guess?
Yeah, and absolutely. And what I would also say with that is, you might decide, actually, I don't want to necessarily buy now or next year, but maybe put it off a little bit. So I often say, if you kind of work out roughly what you're going to need to save, and then, let's say you wanted to buy this year. So let's say I want to buy in a year, so that's 12 months time.
Yes.
What would that mean you'd have to have as excess income each month for the next 12 months, sorry. If that's a bit much, can you stretch it out to 2 years?
Yeah.
And then you've lowered it. So you're not saying I don't want to buy at all. You're just saying I'm going to push that goal a little bit further away so that I can still enjoy my life now, because it's not going to be that fun for you if you're literally, like you said, you're bare bones everything. You're not doing anything for this goal. And I know sometimes we do have to sacrifice. I'm not saying that we don't have to sacrifice, but do you have to sacrifice to the extent that you're just not enjoying life?
Yes.
Or could you sacrifice a little bit, push the goal a little bit further, and just enjoy life a little bit more?
Yeah. And I think that's the conversation I had with myself last year. As much as I would love to live on my own, do I even want to live on my own? I don't think I even do. I just think it's the independence for me.
Yeah.
And where I live in London, it doesn't make sense for me to rent. So I guess my alternative is to buy. And yeah, I just don't think I'm ready at the moment. And I think that's me being completely honest with myself. And I think sometimes you guys at home listening or watching maybe need to have that conversation with yourselves too. So yeah, I guess for me to round up today's podcast episode, do you have one final tip or piece of advice to those listening or watching?
Well, I would just say that I love what you just said then, because I think, like you said, you had a word with yourself and you're like, actually, I don't want to do this. Or it's not my primary goal and I want to put it off a little bit. And I think you're right that often we just kind of we get carried away by what other people are doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really good that you shared that. I think a lot of people will probably be feeling quite similar. What's my final piece? I think my final piece would be just be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Whether that's honesty in terms of whether you want to buy or not, whether that's honesty in terms of actually what's this going to look like? What am I willing to give up or not to get to this goal? And, talk to advisors, talk to professionals, get as much information as you can so that you can make a really informed decision.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Yeah, I love that. What a beautiful way to end the podcast. But for me, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I can't believe it's taken us this long to get you on, but thank you so much, and for all the gems you've shared, because I think it's really, really needed, especially as we look towards the new year. But like I mentioned at the beginning, you share content online, which I personally love. So if anyone wanted to take advantage of the content you share and also be up to date with the news, because you do really good news updates every day, where can they follow you?
If you can follow me at hoops_finance. Normally I forget the underscore. So hoops_finance.
Amazing. Is that all platforms?
I'm on Instagram and then I'm on LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, it's just my name. So Funmi Olufunwa.
Amazing. Well, guys, as always, the links will be in the podcast description. And yeah, thank you so much for me.
Thank you for having me.